very important things are happening, some very unfortunate things, God forbid, with Kratom's legality. And by the way, I know no one's watching yet, but yeah, you can ask me questions. Like if anyone comes on, they can ask me questions. I'll answer it in real time. So basically, what's going on right now is Kratom is under attack, and it's honestly worse than it's ever been. Um, Recently, there was news. It's from the senior fellow in public policy at the American Crime Association, Mac Haddow. Like literally 2 days ago, he posted this tweet. Actually, it might have been 3 days ago now. He says, as new state legislative sessions begin, the FDA is doubling down on their propaganda campaign telling state/local officials that kratom is dangerous, highly addictive, and the DEA is considering scheduling. The AK is deploying our grassroots advocacy to fight back. Join us. So basically, this is the first time we've heard, and this is an official source, that the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, is considering scheduling kratom again. And by the way, this already happened once before in 2016, and it was a miracle that kratom was not banned back then. So back in 2016, the DEA tried to schedule kratom, and ultimately they did not. And it was because basically, like, all the kratom advocates fought against it in an incredible way. By the way, I see people are watching now. You can ask me questions at any time. So what we're talking about today is like the DEA is considering scheduling kratom, and that information is from Mac Haddow, the senior fellow on public policy at the American Crime Association. He literally tweeted 3 days ago that the DEA is considering scheduling kratom. What that means is kratom would be declared probably Schedule 1, as if it was like cocaine or heroin. Literally, like I have some kratom leaves here. This is all kratom is. It's a leaf from a tree. Of course, that's not all it is, but it's it's a natural plant that's very safe. It's never killed anyone in history. In fact, it's saved tens of millions of people. And the DEA is considering scheduling it. And that happened in 2016. They already tried doing that in 2016, and it was ultimately overturned because basically like thousands of people marched on Washington D.C. and they were speaking through megaphones about how kratom saved their life. And there was a real effort to keep kratom legal back then. I think there was like tens of thousands of signatures and stuff. Well, unfortunately, this time is more serious because of what's going on. And by the way, before I go into like why this is more serious than 2016, I want to also mention that there's a bunch of state kratom bans coming, God forbid. So the American Crime Association also released another statement, and I'll read it here. As legislative sessions start up around the country, we expect to see a number of kratom ban bills filed in various states. And they say this is because basically the FDA has been pushing their disinformation about kratom harder than ever. And aside from that, so the FDA is one thing, but also Big Pharma has spent like tens of millions or hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. I know for sure tens of millions, that's been confirmed, on campaign contributions. So, we just went through an election cycle, and a bunch of the people that were elected were funded by Big Pharma money. So there's a bunch of people that are like coming into power right now because, inauguration day is like January 20th. I'm not sure how it works in each state, but there's people being inaugurated across the country right now, the newly elected officials from the 2020 election. And there's a good amount of them that were funded by Big Pharma, and they're pushing Big Pharma's agenda. And so it's expected that we're going to see kratom bans popping up as the legislative sessions start in each state and also on a national level, God forbid. For example, Mississippi is already filed a kratom ban, which is totally crazy because literally the legislative sessions just started. So already several days ago, Mississippi filed a kratom ban. And by the way, for everyone watching, you can ask me questions in real time, and I will. Oh, there's people commenting. I didn't look till now. Well, no one's really asking questions yet, but yeah, you can ask me questions and I'll answer them. So, anyways, Mississippi like just opened their legislative session, and they've already filed a bill to ban kratom, and that's crazy considering what's going on. Like basically, what's going on is that the coronavirus has like caused a complete disruption of our economy and society. There's huge problems surrounding that. Yet there's actually representatives in Mississippi that think kratom is a more important issue, and not only kratom is more important, but they want to ban kratom. Kratom's actually helping people, saving people's lives. I even argue kratom helps save people from the coronavirus because it has like immunostimulant properties. It relieves pain. It can relieve a lot of the symptoms of the coronavirus and therefore help people rest and heal. I think I talked about that in a past show. I'm not going too deep into that. But anyway, so like with all the COVID going on, Mississippi's government, at least one of the representatives there, has chosen to focus on banning kratom instead of doing anything else to help their state. They're actually hurting their state. So that's a really ominous sign that, in Mississippi, that they're already trying to ban kratom, even though the legislative session just opened up. And guess what? Legislative sessions are opening up in every state across the whole country in the coming weeks. I think it's actually in the coming days. So, like, we could see many more kratom ban attempts. And then once again, the DEA is considering banning kratom. So then I got a question, so I'll answer it. What, if anything, can we as advocates do to fight this possible ban? Well, the best thing to do in the past has been to follow the American Kratom Association, because they give you like calls to action. So yeah, go to the American Kratom Association like website. I mean, americankratom.org. They like, there's not anything being orchestrated specifically yet, but you know, like for example, in Mississippi, because they're trying to ban kratom in Mississippi, that's already happening. Eventually, the AK will post something like, "Hey, like go to this meeting in person if you're a Mississippi resident, and like speak about how kratom saved your life." They'll also like be like email the senator. What we could do is, like, if you see a kratom ban like in your state or even another state or on a nationwide level, try to like research it a little bit, find out like which senators are voting on it or whatever. Contact your political representatives. So I guess that's the most basic way to say it. You should contact like your congressman, contact the president, whoever is the president, right? But because it's a transition period. So yeah, you contact your elected representatives, but they're probably not going to listen, unfortunately. So now that I'm going to go into why this time is worse. So yeah, in 2016, the DEA already tried to ban kratom, that was overturned. And by the way, during 2020, kratom was almost banned in a whole bunch of states, including Hawaii, Missouri, New Hampshire, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Mississippi, Illinois, South Dakota, Louisiana, and Maryland. Yep, all those states in 2020, there were kratom ban bills, and they were all defeated. But things have changed. We're not in the same country anymore that we were in even a year ago. So that's the scary thing. So why is this worse? Basically because the government has more power than ever. So in 2016, it was a totally different environment. In 2016, freedom of speech was still a big deal. So yeah, like freedom of speech was still a basic human right for all Americans back in 2016, and kratom advocates exercised their freedom of speech to defeat the ban. Unfortunately, freedom of speech has really declined in our country because of the coronavirus pandemic. And also simultaneously, the government has more power than ever, and constitutional rights are no longer being upheld completely. So that's all very worrisome when it comes to kratom bans, because like, let's say the DEA says we're going to ban kratom. Let's say they actually follow through with this. And by the way, like there's already evidence that they're considering it, which is very bad. And by the way, another note, just to throw this in there, that, you know, kratom was almost banned under the Obama administration, right? When Obama was leaving, that's when they tried to ban kratom in 2016. Now that same sort of administration is coming back into office, so it's very worrisome. It's kind of like the same sort of people that tried to ban kratom before are coming back. So I really do believe what Matt Caddo says, that the DA is considering banning kratom, because the same people that tried to ban it are coming back into power. I'm not saying it's the Democrats specifically, but the same DEA or whatever, it's the same FDA. They're all going to come back now. It's scary. And someone's asking, are there any new and current petitions circulating? Not that I know of, actually, at this moment. I'll get back into that later. I know there's some, but anyways, but not anything live for what's going on now. All right, so why is this worse than it's ever been? So yeah, back in 2016, there was freedom of speech. We used that freedom of speech to keep kratom legal. What's going to happen if the DEA says we're going to ban kratom now? And what if the government takes the position that kratom is deadly? Well, probably the same thing that happens to people that don't believe that the COVID like warrants a lockdown. People that don't believe in vaccines, like people that, you know, there's been all these fights, and I don't want to get into this at all, and I'm not going to. But yeah, the election, there was a lot of people fighting over the election. There's a lot of people fighting over the vaccine. There's two different sides. A lot of people fighting over COVID. And the government kind of took one side, and then everything else that was not in the government's agenda, like anyone that spoke against the government's agenda on COVID or the election or whatever, all their stuff got deleted off the internet. Someone's asking, did he provide a source for where he got the info about the potential DEA ban? I think I could post this through on this software here. This is just a link to Matt Caddo from the American Kratom Association. So yeah, I'm sending it there. All right, so this is actually from the American Kratom Association. They say the DEA is considering a ban, and I take that that's like the most legitimate source there could be, because the DEA probably wouldn't tell us it's going to happen until they did it. So it's very worrisome. There has been no news like this in years at all. We have not heard the DEA is considering a ban at all from a legitimate source for years until now. Very scary stuff. But anyways, back to the freedom of speech thing. So what's going to happen if the government takes the stance that Kratom is bad and dangerous and should be banned? What's going to happen? Well, probably the same stuff that happens to anyone else that speaks against the government's agenda. They're probably going to delete any Kratom advocates posts off Facebook. People are going to have their accounts banned. Same on Twitter. Same even on YouTube. In fact, the video I'm doing now, I wonder what would happen if I did this video like a month from now, or God forbid, like let's say when the DEA finally really does try to ban Kratom and they launch their massive campaign on national news. What would happen if I did this video then? Probably get deleted. I'd probably lose all my social media accounts. So we're in a very scary time where there's less freedom of speech than ever. And that's what makes this far more serious than ever before. Another thing is the government has kind of overstepped its boundaries on like everything. They have more power than ever right now. It's happened over the past year. It's been a very fast transition from what America used to be to like this totalitarian environment we're in now. So that happened really quickly. And it's basically like people have no power, whether it's a speeding ticket or wearing a mask or like bigger stuff like constitutional rights. It's been proven that the people have like no power anymore. The courts are moving very slowly. Just like the mail is barely working. If you guys are Kratom users, the mail like barely works right now. Well, the courts are barely working. The government organizations are barely working. I can't even get my license plate in the mail for my car. There's like, and my mail didn't show up for weeks. That's how the government is right now. So what's going to happen if the DEA tries to ban Kratom now? Well, first off, they're going to delete everyone's posts off the internet, like in partnership with Twitter and Facebook, I guess. That's what's going to happen. And then also, even if you send the messages through their official form, because there's supposed to be like a 30-day comment period, maybe, they're probably not even going to get to it because they're so busy. Every government organization is using this as an excuse, this coronavirus as an excuse to say we're busy. We're lacking staff. We can't get back to you. Like no matter what government organization you call, they're like probably not really going to answer you nowadays. Like for example, my wife lost her Social Security. We couldn't even talk to anyone. There's no one. You can't even call them anymore. It's insane. So that's how the government is. So imagine trying to call anything to do with the DEA. If they try to ban Kratom, you're not gonna be able to get through to them. If they set up an online form to send messages, I don't think anyone's gonna read it. If you try to post stuff online, it'll probably get deleted. Another example of censorship that's happening right now is Google. So if you search Kratom on Google, you're just gonna find a ton of big pharma stuff. So it's already started. If you search Kratom, or even any question like Kratom for opiate withdrawal, can Kratom be drug tested for it? If you type like any question about Kratom in Google, you're just going to find all this big pharma stuff and also all this rehab stuff. So Google's already being censored. There's a ton of information on the internet about Kratom that really answers these questions. What is Kratom? So there's a ton of info on the internet that's real that answers it, but then Google censors it and puts big pharma stuff instead. So the censorship's already begun, and in the same way, I believe if the DEA tries to ban Kratom, God forbid, there's going to be a ton of censorship. It's going to be very hard to post messages on the internet. People will be getting deleted left and right. Like if the president can get deleted, then, if they want to delete Kratom advocates, they could delete Kratom advocates, So it's very scary with that. So yeah, that's why this is far more serious than ever before. And so last year was quite successful, like, maybe it was like before that, but it was basically before the COVID really started was the last Kratom bans. And like I read it, I'll read it again. So they tried to ban Kratom in 2020 in Hawaii, Missouri, New Hampshire, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Mississippi, Illinois, South Dakota, Louisiana, and Maryland. Those are all states where they tried to ban it last year. But that was all before the COVID started. In fact, because the COVID happened, they stopped like the state legislators and the bans stopped rolling in. But there was bans rolling in like every week, and the Kratom advocates defeated them all. One of the main reasons these statewide Kratom bans were defeated was because people could go in person to the like state house and the state senate and speak and be like, hey, Kratom saved my life. And the people voting on it could see their face and hear their story in person. What's going to happen this year with Mississippi banning Kratom and every other state that tries to ban it? By the way, Mississippi is not going to be the only one. That's pretty certain. There's going to be a lot of them, just like 2020, but maybe even more trying to ban Kratom. I don't think anyone's even going to be able to go. Like, if the AKA, like the American Kratom Association would usually like do a call to action and organize people to go to the state house or the state senate to speak. Now it's going to be a Zoom call or something. And if this person that's running the Zoom call doesn't want to hear any Kratom advocates, you can't do anything. Like, at least they had basic respect because there was people actually there in person to speak about Kratom, so they let them speak. A Zoom call is not the same thing. So, all these hearings are happening over Zoom calls, just like all the court hearings for anything, traffic ticket or felony. Everything's over Zoom calls. And that's probably how these Kratom hearings are going to be, which is totally different. So, yeah, once again, the one thing that saved Kratom from being banned in a bunch of states last year was because people could show up in person to tell their story. This year, that's not going to be possible. And yeah, so someone's mentioning, someone's saying we have to try. Yes, no matter what the odds are, no matter how bad the odds are against us for Kratom being banned, we have to try. Because there's tens, like they say there's at least like 15 million Kratom users. Many millions of people depend on Kratom for chronic pain, opioid and drug addiction issues, and mental health issues. I mean, the death and suffering will just be unbelievably huge if Kratom is banned. And also, if we win, if we go against these odds and win, tons of lives will be saved. We have to fight as hard as we can till the last to try to keep Kratom legal, no matter what. So I'm not saying we give up. I'm just trying to wake everyone up right now because this news hasn't really gotten around, even though the American Kratom Association posted it a few days ago. I don't see anyone talking about it. So trying to wake everyone up here because we're going to have to fight hard and start fighting now because it's going to happen quickly because the government is opening up for session. And simultaneously, freedom of speech is at an all-time low. People can't really go in person anymore to these Kratom hearings in the government. So yeah, just this is a warning, I guess. I'm going to do a lot more shows as things progress. And I know people probably really want to do something right now. I don't really have anything for people to do right now besides spread the message of what's going on and be ready. Follow the American Kratom Association website. They will be posting things as it progresses, as it starts to get more serious, and they'll probably have some calls to action, send an email here, call this person. They do stuff like that where they organize all the Kratom people to call someone or to send emails. It hasn't started yet, even though Mississippi is starting to ban Kratom. The hearings aren't happening yet because, it's just starting the legislative sessions. But, probably in the coming week or two, it's going to get a lot more serious. And once again, in fact, let me count how many states tried to ban Kratom in 2020. And that was only in a few months before the COVID started. Once COVID started, they cut off the sessions. So this year, the sessions will be running all year, and there's way less power for the people to oppose anything. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 states tried to ban Kratom in 2020 before the COVID really started up. We could expect at least that many, God forbid. At least that many. Probably more, because there's going to be a lot more time for the government to do stuff this year, and the government has a lot more power to move swiftly this year because people can't really speak up anymore. People can't go to the government sessions because of COVID. So it's all going to be Zoom calls. It's all going to be very quick, and there's not going to be much to do to oppose it, honestly. So yeah, that's to get ahead of any potential bans is what someone says. Yep, so we already have one in Mississippi. And that's, that's just the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's like the warning shot. So I guess I'll just summarize one more time. By the way, you guys could ask any questions. I've been following this closely. So anything there is to know about Kratom bans and the government situation, I know about it. So if you want to ask questions now before I get off, please do. But yeah, just to summarize, not only is it very likely that a bunch of states are going to try to ban Kratom this year, and Mississippi's already trying to ban Kratom. There's actually a bill already in play. The DEA is considering banning Kratom as well. And that would make Kratom like cocaine, as far as legality goes. Suddenly, everyone that has Kratom is like they're holding a bunch of cocaine. Oh, yeah, here's another crazy thing. If Kratom gets banned, God forbid, we just got to look what's happened in the other states like Alabama. If someone has more than 100 grams of Kratom in these states where Kratom is banned, they're considered a drug trafficker. So the laws are totally crazy. I don't know who wrote these ban laws, but they were trying to destroy Kratom users. Like people that get arrested with Kratom in Alabama, if they have a kilo, they go to prison for drug trafficking. Like their definition of a personal or drug trafficking amount is totally off for Kratom. So yeah, everyone that's a Kratom user will become a criminal overnight, and that's going to cause so much suffering too. Besides the fact people can't get their Kratom, it's going to cause a ton of suffering that anyone that gets caught with Kratom will be sent to prison. Literally, if anyone has a kilo, once it's banned, it's like prison time. So God forbid this happens. Do I know what exact states are looking to do this? Well, Mississippi's already doing it. Someone else asked, did Colorado try to ban Kratom last year? No. And by the way, kratom is already banned in like several states. I would have to pull up a map here. I know one of them was Wisconsin. Another one, I believe, is Indiana. Um, I think Vermont's another one. I mean, I should look at the map. 1 second. But yeah, kratom's already banned in some states, unfortunately. Um, because every year they've been trying to ban kratom, and there's been a massive assault every single year. It's crazy. Every year there's been a massive assault on kratom, but this one's looking like the worst. So yeah, Wisconsin, Vermont, Rhode Island, Indiana, Arkansas, and Alabama. Those have all banned kratom so far. And the FDA is pushing really hard right now to have all the other states ban kratom too. So 12 states tried to ban kratom last year. Those were overturned because freedom of speech was still a thing before this COVID got out of control. And also people could show up in person and tell their kratom story at the state legislature. And people were like, there was like 20 people showing up at a time with the American Kratom Association to tell their kratom stories about how it saved their life. And that changed the vote. In all 12 of the states that tried to ban it last year, that's what saved the day. Once the people that were voting on the bill actually saw the faces of the kratom users and heard the stories, they didn't want to ban kratom anymore. This year, it's not possible because of the COVID. This year, they're not going to see anyone's face. It's all going to be Zoom calls. I guess maybe you could see a Zoom call, but it's not going to be the same. So it's much more scarier. And aside from that, there's a lot more censorship. I talked about that for a while. And yeah, someone says Big Pharma is pushing this, I assume. Yes, Big Pharma spent at least tens of millions of dollars on campaign contributions. I suspect it's billions. I just was able to find some info when I looked for just a little while. They spent at least tens of millions of dollars on campaign contributions. It's probably like billions, though, to be honest. So basically, Big Pharma has planted a bunch of people across the national government, the state governments, of course, in the FDA, and even the DEA, too. There's people planted everywhere that are working for Big Pharma. And I guess it's good to talk about why are they doing this? Well, they're doing it because they want everyone to use prescription opioids and prescription medicines in general. Big Pharma sees kratom as a threat because kratom can be used for chronic pain. It could be used for drug addiction. It could be used for mental health issues. It could even be used for like sickness and diarrhea. It could be used for all sorts of things that there's prescriptions for. So that's why they want to ban kratom, because kratom actually, it's much bigger than most people realize. Even kratom users don't realize like how big kratom could be if they weren't trying to suppress it all the time. It could practically compete with the entire pharmaceutical industry. And of course, there's still some drugs that are needed from the pharmaceutical industry, but for a lot of things, kratom works. So that's why they want to ban it. They want people to be using prescription opioids. And not only that, a lot of the prescription medicines are very bad, and they want people to use them because the ultimate goal of Big Pharma is to make everyone sick, and then everyone's going to need even more medications. It's like a perpetual cycle of sickness that they're trying to do. And this is a common story that's happened throughout history. Even Thailand banned kratom in like the 1930s or 1940s. So during World War II, the Thailand government controlled the opium trade. So they made money on every little bit of opium that moved through their country, or every little bit of opium that was sold. So Thailand, the government itself, got all the money from the opium trade back then. So they banned kratom because people started to use kratom instead of opium back in the 1940s in Thailand. So they banned kratom and cut down all the kratom forests. Same thing's happening now. This is just history repeating itself. This already happened in the 40s in Thailand. The government decided they'd rather, have everyone be sick and addicted to opium and make more money than have people using kratom and be healthier. Same thing's happening with Big Pharma. Big Pharma wants everyone to be sick and addicted, and that's what it's all about. And also, they want the money, even though they already have more money than they could ever use in their lives. Like, all the money they will make from this day on, they're never even going to use it. It's just going to be in their bank account till they die. It's crazy. Like, they're just so greedy. Of course, it says in the Bible, if someone has $1 million, they want $2 million. So, it's like they just want money for the sake of money, even if it's going to kill people, even though they're never going to be able to use that money ever because they're already so ridiculously rich. So that's what it's about. It's kind of like a fight of good versus evil. Of course it is. And Big Pharma is totally evil, and they just want more money for no reason. And greed is unending. Someone says it's true. The greed is unending. They're willing to kill off a ton of people by banning kratom just to make billions of dollars they can't even use. Even if they spend exorbitantly every day, they couldn't even spend it all, whatever they're making now. So yeah, anyways, that's enough about that. That's the truth about why kratom's being banned, though. It's all crazy. But unfortunately, once again, Big Pharma has spent a ton of money on political contributions during this election cycle. And there's a lot of people in the state legislators and the national legislators, like the Congress. There's a ton of people that are working for Big Pharma and our government. So we could expect to see a ton of kratom ban attempts, and then that combined with there's like barely any freedom of speech anymore. There's a tremendous amount of censorship. It's already begun. Once again, Google is censoring like all the kratom search results. If you search kratom on Google, you're just gonna find Big Pharma and rehab centers trying to tell people they need to go to rehab for taking kratom. So yeah, that's the reality. The censorship's already out of control. If the government decides we're going to schedule kratom as a Schedule 1 drug, like the DEA does that, God forbid, well, I don't think anyone's post about it is going to be, no one's going to be able to post about it. Like our post will be deleted, or Twitter will post something under all the kratom posts saying kratom is dangerous. Read more here. Just like they're doing with like everything else that they're trying to censor. They'll like literally post on every single kratom post. Kratom is dangerous and deadly. Read more here. During the time that we're trying to fight to keep it legal. So we'd expect some scary censorship, people's accounts being banned. And that's what makes this much more scary than the last time. So 2016 was pretty bad. It was scary. This is much worse because we no longer have real freedom of speech in this country. And yeah, someone commented kratom is the best weapon against the opioid crisis. This ban would be devastating. Well, that's the scary thing. This opioid crisis is completely out of control. Right now, I think it would be much, much worse if it wasn't for kratom existing. But if they ban kratom, it's going to be insane. Like the drug war is going to go off the charts. But I think the powers that be, whoever's behind this, like Big Pharma and what else, whoever else is behind it, they want that. They want the drug war to go out of control. They want more people in prison. They want everyone to be sick and addicted because then they're going to control everyone, and take all their money. That's what it's about. It's a really insane situation we're living in. Kratom's been a bright light against the darkness, and they're trying to get rid of it. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing shows, and I'll continue to update. It's just starting. This is just the first show because now we got official word from like basically the AKA, Matt Caddo at the AKA, saying, hey, the DEA is considering scheduling kratom. So that's a pretty serious warning. And he wouldn't say that unless it's pretty serious. He doesn't just say that lightly. He's like kind of like the official spokesman for the whole kratom world. So yeah, this is official info, not making it up, and it's scary. So yeah, I'll continue to update. The best thing we could do for now is pray. But there will be things to do. There will be people to call, people to send emails to, and all sorts of stuff as time progresses and things get more specific. For now, Mississippi is trying to ban kratom. That's where it started for now. That's the only official thing happening yet. But that's already pretty bad. All right, so I'm going to go now unless anyone has a last-minute question. And once again, I'll be back over the coming days and weeks as this situation progresses. Just a final note, once again, the DEA is considering scheduling kratom, which would make kratom illegal everywhere in the country. Also, there's probably a lot of state kratom bans coming. And then, like we talked about on some past shows, Indonesia is even going to ban kratom like less than a year from now. So, like, we have a lot going on with kratom bans. But yeah, I'll come back maybe even tomorrow to do another update. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone.